We got shirts on sale. Express your love for the evolutions and the new channel rebrand with an Evolution t-shirt and hoodie. On sale now. Also, if you like anime, go check out our anime channel MysticSage for awesome anime content. And be sure to follow me on social media so you can stay caught up with the channels and me. Links will be in the description below. Pokémon. A franchise that, over the last 24 years, has spawned essentially 18 different games, plenty of spin-offs, and an endless amount of merchandise. Pokémon is beloved around the world, and many people love this series for many different reasons. Today, though, I want to focus on the main series games themselves. As the title implies, I want to discuss what the best Pokémon generation is. Needless to say, this of course is going to be based on my own opinions, but I'll at least be giving some detailed explanations for why I feel the way I feel about these games. But because this is a discussion video, I want to break it up into different categories. Like I said, many people love Pokémon for different reasons, so it would be pretty exclusive if I only gave props to the games that fit my own definition of the best games. So the different categories we'll be talking about are the selection of Pokémon availability, story, replayability, gameplay and mechanics, and finally the content of the games. I think doing things this way will be ideal, as it doesn't limit our discussion and gives multiple generations of Pokémon the opportunity to shine. So with the intro out of the way, I think we can dive deep into this gigantic generation glorifying gauntlet. Starting off, we're going to be talking about the selection of Pokémon. What I mean by this is the Pokémon that are available to us in each game by their regional dex during the story. Since most games have a national dex, it wouldn't really be much of a competition if we talked about it that way, now would it? So for the best dex, I really only see 3 major contenders, and those just happen to be games from the last 3 generations: X and Y, Ultra Sun and Moon, and Sword and Shield. This will probably be the toughest section, just because of how much quality all 3 of these regional dexes have. Let's start off with X and Y. Yeah, who would have thought I'd ever be considering Kalos for best anything? But alas, the Kalos games actually make a good case, as it just so happened to have the largest regional dex of any Pokemon game in this series, with 457 creatures to collect. Some pretty solid Pokemon available include Azumarill, Lucario, Garchomp, Aegislash, and the Kanto starters, and that kind of just scratches the surface. You can also get a couple of solid Megastones for your journey as well, although most of them are post-game, so that is a bit of a bummer. There are also 2 other major problems of Kalos. One being that a good amount of the Pokemon just aren't available at great times during a playthrough, and the second being that quantity doesn't always equal quality. Don't get me wrong, there are some really good selections within that 457, but Audino, Chatot, Swanna, and the like aren't really doing it for me. It just feels like there's a lot of filler Pokemon. And yes, while I get every Pokemon is someone's favorite, and I don't really hate the Pokemon I just listed, I just don't think they'd ever end up on my team. At least I hope you all understand where I'm coming from. So then that leaves us with the Ultra games in Sword and Shield. To keep things short, as this section is already running pretty long, I'm going to have to give it to the both of them for separate reasons, so it's not necessarily a tie. With Ultra Sun and Moon, we have the second largest regional dex in this series, with 403 Pokemon available to us. But where Kalos misstepped, Alola strutted. There seem to be considerably less filler-like Pokemon, in addition to a lot of good Pokemon being available to the player pretty early on. I mean, being able to get an Inkay or Zora almost immediately is pretty sweet, and the likes of Crobat, Noivern, and Alolan Trio aren't too far off either. There's also access to Island Scan. I know I said I was talking about regional decks for this entry, but these Pokemon are still technically available during the main game. You just have to work for them. And I don't know about you, but getting access to Aegislash, Greninja, Infernape, and Swampert sounds pretty good to me. Then there's Sword and Shield. It's only just behind Ultra Sun and Moon by 3 Pokemon at 400 in total. And I have to say, this selection of Pokemon is pretty incredible as well. New Pokemon like Corviknight, Toxtricity, and Dragapult build a solid case for the new generation, while returning favorites like Sigilith, Aegislash, and Excadrill help solidify the generation. However, Generation 8 holds one big advantage or disadvantage depending on how you like to play. See, with the wild area, a large amount of the Pokemon in the games could be available at any time based on the weather or max rate battle dens. So if you play your cards right, you could have your perfect team fairly soon. Or, if you like shaking things up a bit each playthrough, Sword and Shield helps with that greatly, as your selection will change with the weather. Of course, this could be tedious to a lot of people that prefer consistency, but for the people that like spicing things up or don't mind the wait, this could very well be the best dex in the series. So that's why I'm giving it to both the Ultra games and Sword and Shield, as it can fit many different playstyles. Want consistency in your playthroughs? I think Ultra Sun and Moon are the best. But if you like a little bit of RNG, Sword and Shield should be right up your alley. Okay, so that particular section was longer than expected, but I can't take these things lightly. Now we can finally move on to the next section, being the story of the game. This should be pretty short and sweet, as I've expressed how I felt on multiple occasions. Sun and Moon and both Unova games are the pinnacle of Pokemon storytelling in my opinion. With Unova, we were blessed with a very unique story, one that made us question whether or not the Pokemon world we've been enjoying for many years was right. Team Plasma and N called for the liberation of Pokemon from their trainers and presented us with an ethical quandary. Now of course Team Plasma and N were being manipulated by Getsis in the shadows, who wanted Pokemon liberated for his own nefarious schemes. But the question of, is it really okay to capture Pokemon, really stuck with me. Then we were blessed with a sequel that had a more traditional approach, the evil team stealing Pokemon for the purpose of ruling the region. But having characters return from the previous games is what made them special, and much more memorable than your standard Pokemon story. Then there's Pokemon Sun and Moon, whose main story revolves mostly around Lily and her family. While it was obvious to us, the switcheroo in the story of the quote-unquote evil team, this being a minor nuisance, whereas the organization that's supposed to be helpful to the region is actually the one causing its demise. In addition to that, it was refreshing to see that issues weren't stirred up because of one's desire to take over the world or whatever. It was because of Lucamine's selfish desires to see Ultra Beasts. Her sanity is definitely broken, having lost her husband and scaring away both of her children from her mental abuse, giving us the shy and timid Lily, and the very angsty and rebellious Gladion. But by the end of the game, Lucamine's children break the shackles of their mother's abuse and try to save her in the end, showing amazing and satisfying character development in my opinion. To me, it really is hard to choose between the two, because one hits you with tough introspective questions, while the other hits you in the feels. So instead of choosing, I'm just gonna cop out and give them both the gold. Next on the list is replayability. I mean, this should be pretty obvious to a lot of you, but I still need to talk about it. Unquestionably, it's Generation 3. More specifically, Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Emerald. I don't know what it is about these games, but they are just endlessly replayable for some reason. I mean, the first thing I ever did on my channel was an Emerald Nuzlocke. Then the next LP I did was a Leaf Green Randomizer Nuzlocke. I'm not the only one either, as Munching Orange's first series was a Fire Red ROM hack. He's also playing through Clover, which is also a Fire Red ROM hack. And Gus and Toby are still doing their Fire Red Randomizer Nuzlocke. You guys should go check them out, by the way. These are just a few examples, but there are dozens upon dozens of other Pokemon creators that have done some sort of Gen 3 challenge series. And you know what? It works. People have a blast playing them and the audiences love watching them. There's not much else for me to say at this point. The Gen 3 games are definitely the most replayable games in the series, and I don't think anything even comes close. For our next section, we'll be discussing the overall gameplay, mechanics, and quality of life features a game has to offer. From the gameplay perspective alone, you might think the Gen 3 games would be getting another award, but that's not the case, because while the games can still stand the test of time, they're not the best by any means. See, they still have things holding them back. No physical special split is a big pain to deal with in earlier generations, and there are still the quality of life features that make playing feel like a smoother experience. Gen 5 had some great things in hidden abilities and the use another repel prompt. Gen 6 gave us the very improved experience share, which took away the need to mindlessly grind every Pokemon. Gen 7 did away with HMs and gave us bottle caps. HMs being gone was a huge sigh of relief from every Pokemon fan, and bottle caps being introduced allowed for more people to give the competitive scene a shot. All of those important features passed down from generation to generation, until we landed here, in Galar. Yeah, Sword and Shield are getting a second appearance on this list. Sure, a lot of the reasoning might be because it was able to piggyback off of the other generation's good features, but that doesn't mean it didn't add anything of value to the mix. For one, battles just feel refined. Tweaks to mechanics over time led to these games feeling just right. I mean, the essence of Pokemon is both catching and battling. You can't do much with catching, so fine-tuned battling was really the only option between the two. But what really gets me going are the quality of life features. When it comes to the competitive, EV training is pretty easy with Pokejobs, being able to max a stat in just a day with up to 10 Pokemon getting maxed out at a time. Or, if you can afford it, just feed your Pokemon the 26 supplements it needs all at once to max out a stat. In previous games, you would have to go one at a time. Well, not anymore. Then when it comes to IVs, bottle caps have made their triumphant return. However, having 2 daycare centers and easier access to Pokemon with perfect IVs and hidden abilities to raid battles has made that aspect much easier as well. We also have Mints, which gives you the ability to change your Pokemon's nature. Really, these games are the most inclusive games in the series when it comes to making it easier for people to competitively battle. Don't think a standard playthrough skimped out on improvements, as there are plenty. Max raid battles essentially give you loot every time you beat the Pokemon inside the den. Those drops range from high price items to sell, coveted TRs of powerful moves, rare candies, and the newly introduced experience candies, which are probably the best things ever introduced to the series. Grinding really wasn't bad in Gen 6 and 7, but it still existed. But with built-in experience share and the option to just endlessly give your Pokemon experience, grinding is basically non-existent. That's not to say the games are inherently too easy, but they can be if you don't control yourself. But really the coolest thing of all well is the ability to evolve your level 100 Pokemon if they still have forms they can reach. Not that this is a super common occurrence, but in the past if you got your Pokemon to level 100, that was it. If you didn't evolve it then, you're just out of luck. I know that really isn't huge, but the little things really do feel like so much care was put into the games, and that's why I believe they deserve the title of having the best gameplay, mechanics, and quality of life features. Now lastly, we will be looking at the pure content that a game offers. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. It's any Johto game, whether it's Gen 2 or Gen 4. Could it really be anything but Johto? I mean, honestly. Of course we have our standard 8 gym playthrough, but then we are graced by getting to return through the Kanto region, earning ourselves another 8 badges. We also can't forget about the inclusion of the Battle Frontier in these games as well, one of the most beloved features that fans desperately want to return. To top it all off too, we get one of the hypest battles in this series, facing up against Red on top of Mount Silver. Johto really can be seen as the perfect sequel games. That's not all though. There were multiple memorable events in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. We of course had the Spike-Eared Pichu event, which was cool enough in its own right, but that further led into the Celebi event, which added a lot of backstory and lore. You travel in time with Celebi and discover that Giovanni is Silver's father, and you also find out the real reason behind his hatred for Team Rocket and his angsty behavior. But then you get to travel back to your time period that take him on and destroy his ambitions of leading Team Rocket once again. We also have the Arceus event, that triggers an encounter of Cynthia and one member of the Creation Trio. Then, with the release of Pokemon Crystal on the Virtual Console, players outside of Japan are finally able to get access to the GS Ball and can capture their very own Celebi. It's just amazing. I know you guys might think I'm just being biased because Johto is my all-time favorite generation, but that's simply not the case. The Johto games have just consistently offered so much content, and that's why they are for sure being crowned the winner of the content category. Well, that's going to do it for this discussion video. I know I didn't provide a definitive answer of what was the best Pokemon generation overall, but I hope you all understand why I didn't want to. There are just too many things to consider for how one could love Pokemon, so categorizing it gave more people a voice for what they feel is the best game. On that note, I want to know what you all think. This is a discussion video after all, so please tell me in the comment section below what you think. Do you think I nail it with all these different categories, or do you have different games in mind? Let's discuss it, as I'm super curious on how you all feel. If you enjoyed the video, why not leave a like and subscribe to my channel with notifications on, that way I never miss an upload. If you want to support me further, consider following my Twitch where I stream all sorts of games from Pokemon to Fire Emblem to Zelda and much more. I also have an anime channel called MysticSage where I do anime reviews, rankings, and countdowns. So if you're interested in that kind of content, go ahead and check that out as well. If you want to support me even further and gain cool perks, check out my Patreon. These lovely people have all given me their support over there and I couldn't be more grateful to them. I think I'm gonna wrap this up though. I'm Mystic Umbreon and I will see you in the future for more awesome Pokemon content.